The fight to get you affordable generic versions of medications is nothing new. More than 40 years ago, Congress passed the Hatch-Waxman Act, a law paving the way for more generics. But today's market can't keep them in stock.
From life-saving cancer treatments to common antibiotics, at the beginning of 2024, nationwide drug shortages hit a record high with more than 320 medications in scarce supply. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. In the fall of 2024, the American Medical Association declared drug shortages an urgent public health crisis and called for the federal government to take action. But several bills introduced to address drug shortages have yet to advance in Congress. And as of September 2024, nearly 280 medications were still considered in short supply.
Investigative reporter Dave Amilati takes an in-depth look at a patient forced to ration her medications, why shortages have become more prevalent, and a solution that could make the drug supply less vulnerable.
For St. Louis City resident Kristen Jacoby, staying on task isn't easy.
Feeling flustered and overwhelmed.
She's one of 15.5 million adults in the nation functioning with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD.
I just feel like I can't get a grasp on life or get a grasp on whatever I'm doing.
Amid a 2-year shortage of medication.
You are not able to take your medication today, correct?
Correct.
How is that impacting you right now?
Well, I'm pretty fidgety. I feel like my mind goes all over the place. It's really hard to sleep at night because my anxiety kind of keeps me up.
She takes a generic version of Adderall because it's covered by insurance, but to stretch her meds, she skips her daily dose on the weekends and days she doesn't go into work.
My brain needs it every day to function properly, but it's not something that I feel I can do at this point.
Kristen has been trying to get her script filled for almost 2 months.
This isn't something I grow out of. I'm going to be dealing with this forever.
Other parents across the metro having a similar experience with their child.
For people who have insurance that only covers generic, now to have to pay for the name brands out of pocket, eventually those are going to run out too. You wonder how long this is going to go on before it does get fixed and who's going to help fix it.
We started looking at, well, why is that the case? It's an economic issue. This is not a logistical issue.
WashU researcher Antonio Sardella says this comes down to a fragile supply chain.
Many of these medicines are not produced in the United States, so the system is very vulnerable and dependent on foreign suppliers, which could result in easily disruptions as those medicines try to make it to the U.S.
To better understand the impact of the shortage on our region, this local pharmacist agreed to speak with us on camera, but asked to be anonymous since his corporate employer did not give him permission to speak.
Why is it that you wanted to sit down and talk about what's happening?
We're a victim of the system.
He says the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration is to blame for this crisis because it did not enforce manufacturers make the required amount of drugs. According to the DEA, it regularly engages with manufacturers about their production of drugs and set limits, called quotas, for how much of these drugs can be produced. In an August 2023 letter from the DEA administrator, Ann Milgram, she says her agency discovered for amphetamine medications like Adderall, manufacturers did not produce their full amounts that these limits permitted them to make, resulting in a billion-dose shortfall for 2022 and a similar trend for 2023. As a result, the DEA instituted 4 changes to quotas and reporting to help see shortages coming and adjust more quickly. 14 months later, patients still struggle to find their medication.
I see these patients every day and you see their face of desperation of like, oh my God, we another week without my medication or another day or, God knows how long. And it's heartbreaking not being able to have a quick solution.
The fix could be here in St. Louis.
This is like the fridge.
Remember Tony with WashU? He's also the founder and chairman of the nonprofit, the API Innovation Center.
Right now, St. Louis is playing a leading role in building resiliency for the United States drug supply chain.
It's a local effort to replace the 92% of pharmaceutical medicines produced outside of the United States, making our supply so vulnerable.
The key is to not only produce it, produce higher quality, produce it at lower price, to produce it in a way that is more efficient.
Its first task is to produce 6 generics, including one for brain cancer. Sardella says they can produce a year's supply for the United States in just 2 weeks.
Is it fair to say we've lost lives
because of this shortage in the country?
Absolutely. Bringing these medicines to bear is critical to survivability and also quality.
While WashU focuses on the economic impact of Sardella's program, the University of Missouri St. Louis is handling the science research.
Go to these 3 lines right here and then eventually combine.
Here, medicines are made in small quantities to be increased for mass production. That won't start until next spring, when area manufacturers finish upgrading their facilities to house these advanced technologies.
Allows for great scalability. We can use it here in the research, but then move that equipment to production.
These chemists work on the Corning machine in Umsel to develop the medicines, but this modern tech changes the profile of the jobs needed for the local drug manufacturers, cutting down on the number of chemists on the assembly line with more quality assurance type jobs.
Now you're unlocking individuals who may not want to pursue careers of higher education, at least not initially, to enter into the space.
The API Innovation Center just received a first-of-its-kind $14 million grant from the Biden-Harris administration and the Department of Health and Human Services. He says API will now increase from 6 to 25 essential medicines and an almost $1.3 billion impact over the next 15 years in the St. Louis region. One of those new meds will be a generic for ADHD. But Sardella says that's 5 years away from getting to the hands of people like Kristen, who are left to juggle all their responsibilities, from doing the dishes to making calls to get their scripts filled in the meantime.
It's not like it's a life or death issue. This isn't a medication I need to survive per se physically, but for my mental state, it's so important.
As for what you can do, experts recommend patients have open conversations with their healthcare providers about any difficulties obtaining medication and available alternatives. Also, mention any concerns about switching prescriptions.
In the meantime, there is another resource beyond the pharmacy helping people find their medications. Reporter Kristen Crowley introduces us to an organization negotiating supply chain challenges.
If we didn't systemically change the way in which the marketplace was working, it was only going to get worse. And 99% of hospital pharmacists say they're handling at least 1 shortage a day.
Laura Bray is the chief change maker at Angels for Change. It's a passion project born from personal adversity. Laura's daughter, Abby, was diagnosed with leukemia at just 9 years old, and the hospitals didn't have the medication she desperately needed. Laura called pharmacies, lawmakers, and pharmaceutical companies until she miraculously found an extra supply.
There was no patient advocacy organization in the country. There was no place to call for a patient or a family like me, and I found that very frustrating.
As the nonprofit's chief change maker, Laura works with members of the supply chain, including drug makers, hospitals, and the FDA, to fill supply gaps, often tracking down extra medications or alerting manufacturers to increased demand.
It has been so fulfilling to see members of the supply chain come in and say, we don't want drug shortages either, and we will do more.
Laura's daughter is now cancer-free. You can find out more about Angels for Change and their mission on investigatetv.com. Just type drug shortage in the search bar.